Graffiti was the first art form that really caught my attention and opened up a whole world of self-expression and creativity to me. Later on in high school, I was introduced to printmaking through screen printing. And the first thing they taught us back then was how to cut a stencil using the Rubylith film, which you see behind me. After you learn the basics of cutting a stencil, which are learning how to decipher the negative from the positive shapes and understanding how the positive shapes and the negative shapes form the structure of an image, you can basically replicate any image that you want. The key for me is that I'm taking these emotions that people will experience throughout their life. And a lot of times people keep these feelings inside, or they're only recognized or noticed by people who are around them. And I'm amplifying their emotions onto the wall. Making it bigger helps people who would maybe not recognize an individual's feelings about life or what they're going through, and have to stop and look at it, because here it is now. It's 15 feet tall by 100 feet wide, and you can't help but notice it. You can't help but notice what people are going through when you stop and you look at these murals.
The materials I work with are pretty important to me. It's a big part of my overall creative process. You know, if I'm in town doing a project for 3 weeks, the first week and a half is always sourcing, finding, discovering. For me, it's a journey of finding the materials. It wasn't until recently that I started working in metal, doing a lot more welding, and really becoming totally fascinated with the way that you can pull together all these various metal forms, and through welding it becomes this amazingly rigid structure that, you know, is epic in proportion and visually precarious. However, through those metal connections is incredibly strong.
I'm probably most known for a body of work about refugee architecture that I've been sort of producing and adding to for, I guess, about the last 8 or 9 years. The work kind of moves between drawings, prints, sculpture, and installation, but primarily drawing and printmaking. I'm interested in exploring, in some ways, the politics of architecture, the ways you can kind of decode our built environment and our designed objects to learn about the power structures in our culture, and also about the way that our modes of production connect us to other people in other parts of the world. My work is really pretty research intensive. I spend a lot of time reading and looking at different things and sort of collecting source material. That research has kind of led me to be captivated by the way that community seems to blossom often under adverse situations. Markets develop, ways of exchange develop. Basically, in many ways, life continues.
I think what I do is I express myself as truly honest and as truly representational of who I really am in the way that I work, and the re-modification of pop cultural items. I like to work in very different facets and kind of use materials that somewhat may not be considered traditional by a lot of artists. I do work with paint and a lot of other things, but I cut most of my paints with mud and really mix them up with resins and epoxies and mediums, and I take a real pleasure in creating something to literally pull it apart and push it out or destroy it, which I think is reflective of this anarchist style.
My work is about pushing the limits and transcendence, the coming up against our perception of boundaries, emotional, physical, or social. In that line of work, I have floated down 1,000 miles of the Mississippi River. I drove across the country shooting wet plate collodion tintypes. I have gone to Ghana and built a house out of mud and bamboo. And what I'm doing at the McColl Center right now is building sculptures that have to do with the DNC in Charlotte. They're political sculptures, and basically the idea is the principle that holds the sculpture together is the principle that undermines it and causes its own destruction. And that is a statement on the political system that we're living in as a whole, and that there's something fundamentally wrong and maybe we need some sort of drastic change.